Middleweight division right now in 2022 is in a bad place, and a couple of old middleweights, they want to make a dent. We have the Killa Gorilla, Jared Cannonier, taking on Derek Bunson. Listen, as far as gorilla nicknames are concerned lately, the vanilla gorillas have really been dropping the ball. Jason Witt got knocked out, Chase Sherman got submitted, and that's just in 2022. And when it comes to this fight for Jared Cannonier, he's 4-1 in his 5-on-in, and his only loss is to Robert Whittaker, who's fighting for a title at the top of this card. So that's all right. If you look at it for the wins, his last fight out, he beat Kelvin Gastelum, who the guy challenging for the title beat as well. Jack Hermanson by finish, Anderson Silva by finish, David Branch by finish. Some of those guys aren't in the UFC anymore, but still quality wins to have on your record. And if you look at it for Derek Bunson, I mean, what a career resurgence this guy's had. Because at one point, a lot of people had written him off as an old middleweight that can only wrestle, that can only get knocked out. And if you look at it in the 5-on-in, Elias Theodorou in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. A win over Ian Heinisch, who they like working on in the back. Dude. A win over Edmund Shabazian by finish. A win over Kevin Holland. And listen, his last time out, he submitted Darren Till, which is not an easy thing to do. I mean, Darren Till at one point was the hotness right now, and I don't know where he is. Now, he's probably somewhere in Liverpool, if I had to guess. But Matt, when it comes to this fight, both guys can wrestle in different ways, and both guys can strike, but in totally different ways. So really, it's easy to break this fight down because stylistically, they match up so well together, and I'm so excited that we get this fight coming up this
This is my favorite fight of the whole entire card other than the main event. It truly is. Like, Derek Bunson and Jared Cannonier, yes, they're both a little bit older, but I still feel like they're in their primes in MMA. It's not like their recent performances have caused you concern of, oh, they can't actually get to a world title eventually. And how fun would that be? Like, Derek Bunson was the initial stepping stone for Israel Adesanya all those years ago at Madison Square Garden. How cool would that be for Brunson to lose Adesanya all those years ago, work his way back up the division, and then we eventually get that rematch one day? Like, that'd be really, really fun.
Just like Marvin Vettori.
Exactly. The thing about Derek Bunson, though, that's been really interesting, especially in this sort of later career resurgence, is that he just relies on his wrestling a lot more, and I'm here for it. I love it, because Derek Bunson, who relies on that sloppy left hand, who puts his chin out, is the Derek Bunson who gets knocked out in spectacular fashion by all of your favorite fighters. We can't roll the clip because we're not Dan Hardy, but still, you get the idea. He's been finished by a lot of people in the UFC, and it's weird with Brunson too, because like Jacare has knocked him out twice. If you told me Jacare beat Derek Brunson twice, I'd probably think, oh, they're about 50-50 on the feet. Brunson probably went for a bad takedown attempt, got submitted, but no, he got head kicked one time, got hit by a massive overhand right the second time. It's just, Derek Brunson's had one of the strangest careers of any MMA fighter going. It is very similar to kind of Bobby Green, who we just talked about on this card.
And even in his second to last fight against Kevin Holland, there were a few spots where he got hit and you went, ooh, this is bad. And then he wrestled.
But that's the good thing. Like, when he got hit against Robert Whittaker, it was, okay, now I'm going for it. Like, oh, I gotta get it back. But now when he gets hurt, it's like, okay, that's fine. I'm gonna use my wrestling, which protects my head, and I'm a very dominant wrestler, and it works out great.
So, we talk a lot about Derek Bunson, the advancements, or maybe not even the advancements, just the tweaks and changes he's been able to make at Sanford MMA, because he's already a guy with that wrestling background coming into MMA. He's always known as a wrestler, but then a power puncher too. So Henry Hooft and company, they've really been able to gel everything together. For Jared Cannonier, out of Alaska, this guy's had the weirdest run, I think, of anybody in the UFC in recent memory. I mean, heavyweight, losing to Sean Jordan, just like Derek Lewis, who's on this card. Then we have fights at light heavyweight. We're only losing to the best guys. Then we come down to middleweight, and it's just scorched earth until he loses his second to last fight. And so you go through it. I mean, Cannonier losing to Whittaker, it is what it is. But you look at his overall game, and we talk about it. They strike, but they strike in different ways. If we're talking leg kicks out of these two guys, one of them does it like no other middleweight. I mean, man.
One of them stopped Anderson Silva in Brazil with a leg kick. And with Jared Cannonier, it's weird. He is a very good striker. He is billed as a striker. But he rarely outstrikes other pure strikers. Like, Jared Cannonier is a great example of a guy who forces a wrestler to then become a striker, and then he takes advantage of them not doing their primary mixed martial art. And that's why I think this fight is so interesting, because Cannonier is, of course, the better striker than Derek Bunson. He just does a lot more on the feet. But Brunson's wrestling, at least in this stage of his career, has just been so dominant at this weight class that if he does get Cannonier down even one time, I think it is going to force Cannonier to become much more hesitant on the feet as a result.
It's going to be really, really difficult when it does come to this fight. I mean, we look at it so far. Both guys will be offensive with their wrestling. I mean, Jared Cannonier, you're less likely to see it, but he is accurate enough when he needs to go for his wrestling takedowns. He doesn't do it very often, and I really doubt we see it against Derek Brunson. Decent takedown defense on his side. Some of the best takedown defense ever out of Derek Brunson. Like Kamaru Usman has good takedown defense. Derek Brunson, 94% takedown defense. He's been in the UFC for, like, we're getting into the decade region for Derek Brunson. So it's wild to see that. And Cannonier, for his part, he's been around for a very long time as well. You just might not think about it. So when we do look at the odds for this fight, it was a little bit of a surprise to me. And Cannonier opened a minus 135 favorite. He's a minus 182 average on best fight odds. For Brunson, open a plus 115. He's a plus 150. If we have a look on Topology for the total votes, surprise us it is to you. Matt, Cannonier's the favorite, so I set my over-under at, I'm going to say 60% Cannonier.
I think it'll be 60-40 Brunson.
Look at that. I mean, wow. 867 total votes, 52% Cannonier, 73% by knockout. For the 48% that have Brunson, 74% by decision. So the odds continue to shift in favor of Jared Cannonier. The fan vote's really close. So, I mean, listen, are you surprised that more fans don't see, I guess, the avenue of a finish for Derek Brunson in this one?
Well, Craig, I'm a bit of a gambling man myself, and I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of happy he is the underdog right now. I look at this fight as a massive opportunity for Derek Brunson to get that chance back at fighting Robert Whittaker and fighting Israel Adesanya. Jared Cannonier is a phenomenal middleweight, and he's really shown an evolution in his game by moving down in weight, because there's something else that has to be said. Like, we gave Jared Vanderaa credit for making a weight class he normally makes. Jared Cannonier was a heavyweight, and a pretty big one at that, and now he's one of the most muscular fighters on the roster, because he's just been able to get into the best physical shape as possible, and that means something. Like, no one can say Jared Cannonier isn't like a dedicated guy. You know, like, that takes a wholesale change in your life to be able to go down that much in weight. But I still think the wrestling of Derek Brunson is going to open up a lot of his strikes on the feet. And I really do think that this is one of those fights, similar to what we saw against Darren Till. He took Till down one time, beat him up with ground and pound, and then submitted him. He might not be able to get the submission as quick against Cannonier as he did against Till, just because Cannonier is a lot stronger than Darren Till is at this weight class. But I do like Brunson's ability to just control this fight on the mat.
It really is a tricky one. And when it comes down to it, I mean, for Derek Brunson, can mix it up on the feet for sure. Obviously, those knockout losses kind of weigh heavy in the back of your mind against a guy like Cannonier.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how those leg kicks play out, because Jared Cannonier can switch stances quite well. Odd to see middleweight training at MMA Lab. Usually you have a lot of fighters in the lower weight classes. I think it makes a big difference. It's just going to be tricky for me against a southpaw like Brunson. Again, you go for that leg kick. Derek Brunson has a lightning left hand. That really does open it up. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I like Derek Brunson in this fight as well with the wrestling. I think Cannonier has great takedown defense. When it's up against the cage, he can normally have a lot of success. I just see it being very difficult for him against Brunson. So maybe it's against my better judgment, but both of us going with the underdog in this fight in Derek Brunson. Are we crazy?
Will you change your pick based on his hairstyle? If he's blonde, do you like him a little bit more?
If he's blonde, I like him a little bit more. We'll have to wait and see. Matt, Super Dave Osborne, myself, both of us going with Derek Brunson in this fight. You let us know down below who you have. Is it back to the crystals for Cannonier, or is it blonde hair, don't care, Derek Brunson to get the win? You let us know down below. Big time middleweight fight up at the top. I mean, listen, with a win, one of these guys could get a title shot. Because listen, Sean Strickland was all right against Jack Hermanson, but that fight doesn't get you a title shot. Sean Strickland's talking about S and some D to get his title shot. So for me, I'm really looking forward to the fight up at the top of this card. Listen, keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.